force, raw, earth-shaking power. That's what comes to mind when you hear the word Hemi. It's not an ordinary engine. It's a legend that roars to life with every turn of the key. The Chrysler 426 Hemi obliterated the competition, left skid marks on the pages of history, and became the thumping heart of American muscle. This isn't just a story about pistons and combustion. This is the tale of how a group of determined engineers in Detroit created an engine so dominant, so overwhelmingly powerful, that it forever changed the landscape of American performance cars. The year is 1963. JFK is in the White House, the Beatles are on the rise, and on racetracks across America, Ford and Chevrolet are locked in a fierce battle for supremacy. Chrysler, they're eating dust, watching taillights fade into the distance. But not for long, because deep in the bowels of Chrysler's engineering department, a secret weapon is about to be unleashed. Its codename? 426. Its mission? Total and utter domination. To truly appreciate the impact of the 426 Hemi, we need to wind the clock back to the early 1960s. The automotive landscape was a battlefield, and Chrysler was losing the war. While Ford and Chevrolet were trading blows at the top of the NASCAR standings, Chrysler was struggling to stay relevant. They were the underdogs watching the taillights of their competitors disappear into the distance. The situation was dire. Chrysler's market share was dwindling, and their reputation for performance was fading. In the showrooms, they were losing ground to the stylish and powerful offerings from Ford and GM. On the racetrack, particularly in NASCAR, Chrysler vehicles were being outgunned and outclassed by Ford's sleek Galaxies and Chevrolet's powerful Impalas. NASCAR in the early 1960s was a high-stakes arena where manufacturers fought for supremacy with ever more powerful engines and aerodynamic bodies. The old adage, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was a business model. Chrysler knew that to survive in this cutthroat market, they needed something revolutionary. Now let's set the record straight. The Hemi wasn't born on the streets, it was forged in war. During World War II, Chrysler developed an experimental Hemi engine for the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt fighter aircraft. This beast, the XIV-2220, was an inverted V-16 that cranked out a whopping 2,500 horsepower. Despite never seeing combat, it gave Chrysler engineers priceless experience. Come peacetime, Chrysler didn't let this knowledge gather dust. In 1951, they unleashed the firepower, the first automotive Hemi. This 331 cubic inch V8 churned out 180 horsepower, numbers that left the competition in the dust. The Hemi wasn't for Sunday drives either. Briggs Cunningham stuffed these engines into his race cars, taking on Europe's best and proving American muscle could compete globally. But by 1959, high production costs sent the Hemi to the sidelines. It seemed like game over for the hemispherical head. Little did anyone know this was just halftime. As the 1960s dawned and the horsepower wars heated up, Chrysler's engineers knew they had an ace up their sleeve. They dusted off those old Hemi blueprints and got to work. They weren't simply going to join the horsepower war, they were going to win it. Enter a group of Chrysler engineers led by Tom Hoover, often referred to as the father of the 426 Hemi. Chrysler initiated a top-secret project to develop an engine that would not only compete, but dominate. The goal was clear: create the most powerful engine NASCAR had ever seen. The result of their labors was the 426 Hemi. The 426 denoted its displacement in cubic inches, but it was the Hemi part that made it special. Hemi stands for hemispherical combustion chamber, a design that allows for larger valves, better airflow, and more efficient combustion. While Chrysler had used hemispherical heads in the past, the 426 Hemi took the concept to unprecedented levels. And it didn't take long for this engine to earn a nickname that perfectly captured its essence: the Elephant. This moniker wasn't just about its massive size and weight, though at over 800 pounds, it certainly was a behemoth. The Elephant name also spoke to its enormous power and the way it dominated everything in its path. Like its namesake, the 426 Hemi was big, powerful, and impossible to ignore. The engineering challenges were immense. Creating an engine with hemispherical combustion chambers meant dealing with complex valve actuation systems, heavy components, and the need for precise machining. But the potential benefits were too great to ignore. The hemispherical shape allowed for a more central spark plug location, promoting better flame propagation. It also permitted larger valves, which meant more air and fuel could enter the cylinder and more exhaust could exit quickly. Compared to the wedge-shaped combustion chambers common in other engines of the time, the Hemi design was revolutionary. It gave the air-fuel mixture room to breathe, swirl, and explode with maximum force. This translated directly into more power, a lot more power. The development of the 426 Hemi was a symphony of engineering precision. Every component was scrutinized, tested, and refined. The block was cast iron, robust enough to handle the immense forces it would encounter. The crankshaft was forged steel, strong enough to withstand the explosive power of the combustion events. The pistons were forged aluminum, light enough to rev high but strong enough to endure. But the true heart of the Hemi was its cylinder heads. These massive chunks of aluminum were engineering marvels. Each one weighed about 70 pounds, heavier than some entire four-cylinder engines. But that weight brought with it incredible strength and the ability to house some seriously large valves. The intake valves were a massive 2.25 inches in diameter, while the exhaust valves measured 1.94 inches. They were floodgates for power. The 426 Hemi made its debut at the 1964 Daytona 500, and what happened next was nothing short of automotive shock and awe. Chrysler-powered cars dominated the field, taking the top three positions. Richard Petty's Plymouth crossed the finish line first.
The winner of the 6th annual Daytona 500.
A full lap ahead of the competition. It wasn't merely a win, it was a statement of absolute superiority. The performance sent shockwaves through the racing world. Ford and Chevrolet engineers were left scrambling, their carefully developed engines suddenly obsolete. The 426 Hemi had raised the bar to unprecedented heights. NASCAR had never seen anything like it. Throughout the 1964 and 1965 seasons, Hemi-powered cars ruled NASCAR. They won 26 out of 62 races in 1964 and 32 out of 55 in 1965. These wins demonstrated its overwhelming power and reliability. The Hemi's combination of horsepower and durability made it nearly unbeatable on the high-speed ovals of NASCAR. But Chrysler's domination came at a price. The competition cried foul, arguing that the 426 Hemi was a pure race engine with no real connection to what Chrysler was selling in showrooms. NASCAR, feeling the pressure to maintain competitive balance, decided to change the rules to level the playing field. They introduced a new homologation requirement. If a manufacturer wanted to race an engine, they had to sell it in a minimum number of production cars available to the public. This rule change was clearly aimed at the 426 Hemi. NASCAR assumed that Chrysler wouldn't be able to justify the expense of putting such a highly strung race engine into production cars. They were wrong. Chrysler's response was bold and unexpected. Not only did they commit to producing the required number of Hemi engines for homologation, but they also decided to offer it as an option in a wide range of their production vehicles. The 426 Street Hemi was born, and with it, the golden age of the American muscle car truly began. The Street Hemi was slightly detuned from its race counterpart, but it remained a force to be reckoned with. Officially rated at 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque, it was one of the most powerful engines available in a production car at the time. And those numbers were conservative. Many believed the true output was north of 500 horsepower. The introduction of the Street Hemi turned the muscle car war into a rout. Chrysler dropped this engine into everything they could. Dodge Chargers, Plymouth Roadrunners, Plymouth Barracudas. The quarter-mile times these cars had were mind-bending for the era. A Hemi-equipped Plymouth Roadrunner could blast through the quarter-mile in the low 13-second range right off the showroom floor. In the mid-1960s, that kind of performance was almost unheard of in a production car. The cultural impact of the 426 Hemi was profound. It became the ultimate expression of American muscle. Having a Hemi under the hood was like having a nuclear reactor in your driveway. It commanded respect, awe, and not a small amount of fear. The Hemi became a pop culture icon, featured in songs, movies, and TV shows. It was the engine of choice for drag racers and street racers alike. The distinctive bulge of a Hemi hood became a status symbol, a visual representation of the power lurking beneath. But owning a Hemi wasn't for the faint of heart. These engines were temperamental beasts, demanding high-octane fuel, expert tuning, and a heavy right foot to truly shine. The dual four-barrel carburetors were finicky, the spark plugs were buried deep in those massive heads, and it consumed fuel at an alarming rate. But for those who could tame it, the rewards were immense. Back on the NASCAR circuit, the reintroduction of the Hemi led to continued dominance. However, the other manufacturers weren't standing still. Ford and Chevrolet were pushing the envelope with their own high-performance engines, leading to some of the closest and most exciting racing NASCAR had ever seen. The Hemi's success on the track translated directly to success in the showroom. Chrysler's market share grew, and their performance reputation skyrocketed. The 426 Hemi had accomplished its mission. It had put Chrysler back on top. However, the Hemi's dominance in NASCAR eventually led to its downfall in the sport. After the 1964 and 1965 seasons, NASCAR effectively banned the engine by changing the homologation rules again, requiring manufacturers to produce even more units of an engine to make it eligible for racing. This move was clearly aimed at the Hemi, which was expensive to produce and only offered as an option in select models. Chrysler's response to this ban was both creative and defiant. They continued to use the 426 Hemi, making only minor modifications to comply with NASCAR's evolving rules. However, by the early 1970s, NASCAR introduced stricter homologation requirements, including the need to produce at least 3,000 units of Hemi-equipped cars for the public. Due to the high cost of producing the 426 Hemi in such large numbers, Chrysler found it economically unfeasible to meet the new requirements. As a result, they began to scale back their participation in NASCAR. Despite its exit from NASCAR, the legacy of the 426 Hemi continued to grow. In drag racing, where there were fewer restrictions, the Hemi remained the engine to beat. Its basic architecture proved capable of handling immense power when modified, making it a favorite among drag racers. Top-fuel dragsters and funny cars powered by Hemi engines dominated the quarter mile, setting speed records that seemed unbreakable. The early 1970s brought challenges that even the mighty Hemi couldn't overcome in the production car world. Stricter emissions regulations, rising insurance costs, and the looming fuel crisis all conspired against high-performance engines. The 426 Hemi made its last appearance in a production car in 1971, marking the end of an era. However, legends never truly die. The 426 Hemi may have left the production lines, but it lived on in garages, at drag strips, and in the hearts of enthusiasts. Chrysler may have stopped building them, but racers never stopped racing them. The basic architecture of the 426 Hemi proved capable of handling immense power when modified, making it a favorite among drag racers to this day. The legacy of the 426 Hemi extends far beyond its production years. It became a cultural icon, a symbol of American muscle and engineering prowess. The word Hemi entered the lexicon as shorthand for power and performance. When people talked about muscle cars, the Hemi was always part of the conversation. Even today, nearly 6 decades after its introduction, the 426 Hemi remains revered in automotive circles. Its influence can be seen in modern Mopar crate engines, which still bear the Hemi name and share some design principles with their legendary ancestor. Restorations of Hemi-powered muscle cars command premium prices at auctions, with rare examples fetching millions of dollars. Chrysler, now part of Stellantis, continues to use the Hemi name on its modern V8 engines. While these new engines don't use a true hemispherical combustion chamber, they carry on the spirit of their ancestor with their focus on power and performance. The latest iterations of these modern Hemis, such as the Hellcat and Demon engines, produce power figures that would have seemed impossible even to the original 426 Hemi engineers. If you enjoyed this journey, be sure to check out our other videos on legendary engines. See you there.